Choir, it's good to have you back. Yeah. Marietta, you sang the psalm and you read the second reading. I was wondering if you could preach for me this morning too. Remember? No? Okay. Had to give it a shot. Today in the Eastern Orthodox Church, it's the feast day of St. Irenaeus. St. Irenaeus was a Greek bishop, theologian, and martyr who is believed to have heard John, the beloved disciple, teach. And there is this quote from Irenaeus that you may have heard or seen before, and it goes like this: the glory of God is a human being fully alive. The glory of God is a human being fully alive. It's often quoted by spiritual writers and conference leaders. If you were to do a Google image search, you'd see it written across the page in a cool font with accompanying photo of, like someone rock climbing or swimming in the ocean or jumping in the middle of a field like you do, or standing at the top of a mountain or seaside at sunset with arms raised in a V. The glory of God is a human being fully alive. Now, if you're a rock climber or a deep sea diver, if you just happen to be a person who likes running and jumping in fields, more power to you. Sure, we can feel some sacred connection and pleasure in those things, but when we see that Irenaeus quote alongside those manufactured images, I think what it can give us is this idea that the glory of God is discovered in our being adrenaline junkies, or that aliveness, the full life looks like something like that, which is all well and good. But what if you're a parent trying to raise kids, work a full-time job or jobs, navigate a monthly budget with your spouse? What does aliveness look like then? What if you're a person with physical or financial limitations and you can't afford to find God in the middle of your personal Patagonia commercial? What does a full life look like then? Well, the good news is we've misquoted old Irenaeus and missed what he was writing about those centuries ago. But before we revisit that, we need to walk with the disciples through Caesarea Philippi, because it might show us what aliveness and a full life looks like. Caesarea Philippi, it's curious, that Matthew mentions this specific location, because while the disciples were walking with Jesus through Caesarea Philippi, they would have been taking in some interesting sights. First, there were the remnants of these ancient structures carved out of the limestone bedrock, weathered by time and partly covered by wild vegetation, but the roughly hewn image was still visible. It was Baal, the fertility god of the Canaanites long ago. Next were these dilapidating temples constructed by Alexander the Great in his Hellenistic conquest in honor of the Greek god Pan, the god of wild and desolate places. As they made their way through this town a little more, they came in contact with these shrines in honor of Caesar. Inscribed on the shrine was Divi Filius, Son of God, because the Romans believed Caesar to be the Son of God. And last, they heard a river running alongside of them, but not just any river. The river was fed by an underground spring believed by the Greeks to be the gateway to Hades, and by the Romans to be the land of the dead. And it is here, in this place, where Jesus, he stops walking and he turns around and asks his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" Well, some say Elijah, some say John the Baptist. There are those who say Jeremiah. And then Jesus asks the disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" Well, if it was awkwardly silent before, this is even worse. No one knows what to say. No one wants to say the wrong thing, but most likely no one necessarily understood the question. If it were me in this situation, I would have been like, "Hey, there's an Allsup's back there. I'm going to go grab a burrito." But then Peter speaks. This isn't quick-tempered Peter. This isn't foot in the mouth Peter or impetuous Peter. No, something awakens inside of Peter, and he sees something in the others that the others can't yet. And Peter says, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Do you see what's happening? They are standing amidst the rubble of ancient idols, next to the ruins of pagan temples, in the shadow of shrines ascribing godlike status to a tyrant, and by a river of death. And it is in this place where Peter looks at Jesus and says, "Oh, I know who you are. You're the Son of God, the living God." Which is so strange, because since he was a little boy, Peter was taught that the Messiah would be someone strong and fierce who would wield the sword against all of Israel's enemies, reestablish Israel's position of power in the world. In other words, he'd look like a Canaanite war god, or he'd look like Alexander the Great, or he'd look like Caesar. He wouldn't look like Jesus. He wouldn't look like an itinerant rabbi who spends his time with lepers and tax collectors and drunkards and prostitutes, allowing women and children into his inner circle, inviting people to love God with all their heart, mind, and soul, and to love their neighbor as themselves. That's not the Messiah Peter was taught about. You see, I think Peter in that moment, standing in the shadows of false gods next to this river of death, saw in Jesus life. In Jesus, he didn't see a man trying to conquer the world through power, but transform the world through love. I believe he saw in Jesus for the first time the heart of God, and it made Peter come alive. Speaking of seeing, you know what old Saint Irenaeus really wrote all those years ago? For the glory of God is a living human being, and the life of the human being consists in beholding God. The life of the human being consists in beholding God. Where do you behold God in your life right now? We may not live in Caesarea Philippi, but we have no shortage of images that distract us, temple and shrines of human making, whether they be figurative or literal, that vie for our attention and our devotion. So where do you behold God? Because wherever or however that happens, I believe that is where we encounter Jesus. This is where we join Peter in his confession and say, "Oh, I know you. You are life." And just as Peter beheld God in the life of Jesus, and people beheld Jesus in the life of Peter, people will behold Jesus in our lives too. Yes, even in our messy, imperfect, complicated lives, they'll see it. They will behold. And that, my friends, is a human being fully alive. Amen.